Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste everybody. Today we will begin talking about the issue of what is real and what appears to be real. What is truth and what appears to be the truth. So this is the question that we are going to take up this morning and see how the two Mahabharatas, namely Vyasa Mahabharata and Sarala Mahabharata, how these stories have discussed this question. This is what we are going to see this morning. But before that, let me say something by way of clarification. You might have noted that I said that before the war started, Yudhishthira went to seek the blessings of the Kuru elders and his guru. So he went to Bhishma, Drona, Kripacharya, Bhurishrava and Ashwasthama and Karna. And Karna blessed him. You might have wondered whether I made a mistake by including Karna. Then I also said that when Krishna asked Arjuna to start the war by shooting the first arrow, Arjuna refused to do that. Arjuna refused to start the war Arjuna refused to start the war by attacking Bhishma, Drona, Kripacharya, Karna and Shakuni. You might have wondered, what was this relationship between Karna and the Pandavas? Why were the Pandavas hesitant to attack Karna? Why did Arjuna tell Krishna that Karna is my elder brother, he is the eldest and he is like my father, so I cannot attack him. Now in Vyasa Mahabharata, the identity of Karna was known after his death. Kunti had kept it a secret from the Pandavas, from her sons, that Karna was her eldest born. It is only after Karna's death, at the time of the offering of Shraddha, that Kunti revealed that Karna was the eldest Pandava. Karna was the eldest brother. But in Sarala Mahabharata, it is not the case. Virtually right from the beginning, everyone knew the identity of Karna. The Pandavas knew, the Pandava brothers knew that Karna was their elder brother, and everyone else, including Bhishma, Drona and Duryodhana and the Kaurava brothers, they all knew that Kunti's eldest son was Karna. Similarly, so it is expected that Yudhishthira, so it is expected that so Yudhishthira's and Arjuna's behavior with respect to Karna is something that is expected. They knew that he is the eldest and they knew that he was like their father, and that is how Yudhishthira sought his blessings before the war, and that is how Karna blessed him for victory. And the same happened in case of Arjuna as well. Arjuna refused to attack Karna, saying that he is the eldest, he is like his father. What about Shakuni? In Vyasa Mahabharata, Shakuni was not a well-wisher of the Pandavas. He was a well-wisher of the Kaurava brothers, and the Pandavas were his enemies. But here, Arjuna tells Krishna that he knew, and Krishna surely knew, that Shakuni was actually working for them. Although he was with the Kauravas, he was actually a well-wisher of the Pandavas. So how was that? Now the Shakuni story in Vyasa Mahabharata and the Shakuni story in Sarala Mahabharata are different. We will, when we discuss Shakuni in depth, we will come to that. Only at the moment I would only say that what Arjuna said was correct. In fact, we'll come to Shakuni later, but in fact, this is what Sahadev told Shakuni. Sahadev told Shakuni in the battlefield, that was the 17th day of the war, and all the Kaurava brothers were killed except Duryodhana. And on the 17th day of the war, Shakuni and Sahadev, they met each other on the battlefield and they were fighting. And Sahadev told Shakuni, Mama, why are you fighting now? You wanted the destruction of Duryodhana and his brothers. The Kaurava army has been destroyed. All the important the Kaurava army has been you wanted Duryodhana and his, you wanted to harm, you wanted Duryodhana and his brothers to be destroyed. 99 brothers of Duryodhana have fallen, only he remains, and it's a question of today or tomorrow. So your goal has been achieved. You have succeeded in taking revenge against the Kauravas. Now why are you fighting? This is not your war. You had a purpose, the purpose has been solved, the purpose has been served. Now you go back to your kingdom and rule happily. Shakuni said, this is true that his purpose had been served, that he wanted Duryodhana and his brothers to be destroyed. He had succeeded. Only Duryodhana remained, but he would fall that day or the following day. So he had succeeded, but he did not want to go back to his kingdom. He wanted to die on the battlefield. He wanted to fight and die on the battlefield. Why? We will discuss these things when we talk about Shakuni later. So the Pandavas knew, at least Arjuna at that point of time knew, and Sahadev certainly knew, and Krishna did, that Shakuni was actually trying to take revenge against Duryodhana and his brothers, and he was actually helping the Pandavas. So that at least Arjuna knew at that point of time, Sahadev all along knew, and so did Krishna. How did Krishna know? How did Krishna know? The Pandavas had been the Lakh palace or Jatugraha had been set on fire, and the Pandavas were supposed to have been burned. The Pandavas were supposed to have been destroyed in that fire. But the Pandavas had escaped. That not many knew. Vidura, of course, knew this, and Sanjaya knew this. Dhritarashtra charioteer, he knew this. And Krishna came, hearing that the Pandavas were destroyed in the fire. Krishna and Balaram came, and they wept and they cried piteously, along with others, But Krishna was only pretending that he did not know that the Pandavas were alive. So one night, Sahadev, Sanjaya, Krishna and Vidura meet. And Krishna asks Shakuni, Shakuni, what happened to the Pandavas? They must. He told Shakuni that when they met, Krishna told Shakuni that the Pandavas had been destroyed in the fire. Shakuni told Krishna that look, anyone who you protect, how can any harm come to him? How can any harm come to him? You are the protector of the Pandavas. How can the Pandavas perish? So Krishna told them that look, we are four of us here, so let us promise to each other that we will not divulge this secret to anybody. So Shakuni, Vidura, Sanjaya, they all promised to Krishna that they would not divulge this secret to anybody. So when Dhritarashtra asked the Kuru elders as to what to do with respect to making Duryodhana the king, now since Yudhishthira had perished, these three persons who were with him, namely Vidura, Sanjaya and Shakuni, who knew that Pandavas were alive, Yudhishthira was alive, did not say a word. So Bhishma said that now since Yudhishthira is not there, so Duryodhana could legitimately become the king. So Duryodhana was duly anointed king of Hastinapura. So when Duryodhana fought the Kurukshetra war, or when the game of dice was played, when Duryodhana fought when the Kurukshetra war happened, Duryodhana was not the crown prince, he was the king. This was not the case in Vyasa Mahabharata. Duryodhana had not become the king. Dhritarashtra was the king and Duryodhana was the crown prince. So nobody had become king of Hastinapura. So Duryodhana had not become the king of Hastinapura by the time he breathed his last. But the story here is that after the Varunavanta fire, after the fire in the Lak Palace, Dhritarashtra, after the fire, Duryodhana became the king of Hastinapura. So that is what happened. And Dhritarashtra was only the retired king. He was there, but he was the retired king. All the power was in the hands of Duryodhana. So this is an important thing to take note of. So the two things that I thought I would sort of that we might take note of at this stage is that Karna was the eldest son of Kunti was something which everyone knew. In fact, when the Pandavas, when Yudhishthira, Bhima and Arjuna and Nakula, when the Pandavas were children, Sahadev had not been born yet, neither was Nakula. One day, Kunti took Yudhishthira, Bhima and Arjuna to the presence of Karna when she knew that Karna was growing up in Radhe's house. So she took her three children to Karna and the three children prostrated before Karna, knowing that he was the eldest, he was their elder brother. But that meeting did not, the meeting was it was a sad meeting. Karna asked the names of the children, and when he heard that Kunti had named her, that Yudhishthira was the name of one of the brothers, he was very upset. He said, "Mother, you know that I am alive, and since you know that I am alive, how did you call?" No, I'm sorry. No, Kunti said that you know that I was your eldest son, but you called Yudhishthira the eldest. Therefore, I'm very upset about it. And the only way I could be called the eldest is when Yudhishthira dies. So Kunti was very upset and she left. So the meeting did not end in a happy note, but the Pandavas knew that he was the eldest. And Yudhishthira continuously said, Yudhishthira said it many times, that when they win the war, Yudhishthira said that when the war started, Yudhishthira told Karna, before the war started, Yudhishthira told Karna that come to our side, we are your brothers, so fight for us, and when the war is over and with our victory, then you will become the king and I will be happy to serve you. So what I said was not wrong. It is just that in Sarala's Mahabharata, the identity of Karna was known to everybody right from the beginning, almost right from the beginning of the story, and that Shakuni was fighting, that Shakuni was actually working for the Pandavas against the Kauravas was also known to was not a secret, at least to Sahadev, to Arjun, and to Krishna, and of course to Vidura and others. So they knew. Now, I said that today we will be talking about the issue of what is real and what appears to be real, what is the truth and what appears to be the truth. You might recall that we began with the theme of Arjuna's unwillingness to fight and how he finally joined the fight. And while discussing that, we talked about many questions relating to dharma, ethics, conflict between dharma and ethics, and how these were resolved in Vyasa Mahabharata, and the question of ethics in and how the same questions were dealt with in Sarala Mahabharata. The same theme, the same issue, the same concerns, two different perspectives on them, and two different ways of storytelling, or two different ways of implementing these or executing these in the form of stories. So different stories. We continue to do that with respect to another question, and that was, who must be entrusted with the highest knowledge, be it the knowledge of the ultimate truth, ultimate reality, or moksha, or be it the knowledge of warfare. So to whom should be imparted this knowledge? And we said that it's a part of our tradition that knowledge must not be given to an apatra, somebody who is not worthy of it. Because if knowledge goes to an apatra, then there is the fear of its misuse. So we found how this was misused by Vaswasthama in both these Mahabharatas, and how the question of punishment as against giving an opportunity for repentance and regeneration, how these questions were talked about in Vyasa Mahabharata and Sarala Mahabharata respectively. So today let us see what is real, what is unreal. In the first, when we began I had drawn attention to the fact that Krishna had told Arjuna in Srimad Bhagavad Gita that Bhishma, Drona, Jayadratha and so many Kaurava heroes, so many Kaurava warriors had already been killed by him. So he was actually the agent. He had killed them. Even if Arjuna did not kill them, they would not live. He had been killed. They have been killed. And in Vishwarupa Darshan Yoga, I mean, when Arjuna saw Krishna's Vishwarupa, he actually found Bhishma, Drona and others, Jayadratha and others, perishing in the fire that was emanating out of Krishna's mouth. So he had seen them, he had seen them dying. So Krishna said, you be a nimitta, you be only an instrument. So you will not kill anybody, you will only be an instrument because they have already been killed. And that happened in the 11th chapter. So the idea is that the truth is that Krishna was the doer and Arjuna would only be an instrument. So that theme is continued. So we will take it up now. I mean, let us now see. Let's come to that now. One day, after Drona's death and Ashwasthama failing to kill the Pandavas by his Narayana Astra, Arjuna asked Vyasa. He said that when I shoot my arrow against my enemy, I see in front of my arrow a fiery person with the body of fire, with an upraised spear, which dazzled like the brightest suns, like 1,000 suns, which dazzled with the enormous light of, with the energy of and the power of 1,000 suns. Now, such a person was walking ahead with that raised spear, and it was he who was actually killing. Before my arrow could hit the person had already been killed by him. People say that I killed, but actually it is this person, this terrible looking person with a raised spear, the dazzling spear. It is this person who was actually doing the killing. Who was he? Who is he? And Vyasa said, he is Shiva. Actually, he said, he said he is Mahadev, he is Rudra, he is Shiva. And who was Shiva? He said he was formless. Shiva did not have any, Shiva doesn't have forms, but he has all the forms. Shiva is time, Shiva is Rudra, Shiva is Agni, Shiva is Varuna, and Shiva is everything. He is, you think of eternity in terms of time, and that is Shiva. You think of the minutest, you think of a muhurta, that also is Shiva. So Shiva is everything. So he is God. He is the god of death, and he is death. It is Shiva who was actually doing the killing. So when you shot your arrow at the enemy, it was this Rudra, this Shiva, this Mahadev who did the killing, and your arrow only sort of, your arrow only did, what you did was only an illusion. The truth was that Shiva in the form of death, Shiva in the form of time, Shiva who was eternal, Shiva who was formless, and Shiva is who is with all forms. So it is he who had done the killing. So Arjuna understood that what appeared, he only saw that something was happening. He only saw that there was a fiery person, there was a person with a body of fire who was ahead of his, who was walking in front of his arrow, and he was the one who he had killed. He did not know who he was, what his identity was. And but he realized that it is he who had done the killing and not Arjuna himself, although everyone said that Arjuna did the killing. So this is a beautiful example that shows that there is a difference between what appears to be real and what indeed is real. Arjuna had a perception of this, and I think Arjuna had a perception of this because Arjuna was a spiritually elevated person himself. That is why he could see this. What, to the best of my knowledge, this is what Arjuna saw with reference to his enemies. But what about the others? It is not merely that Arjuna killed these people. So many others were also killed in the battlefield, both from the Pandava side and from the Kaurava side, and not by Arjuna himself. What about others? So that I do not know. I mean, what probably by telling this, probably through this example, the poet wants to suggest that whether Arjuna saw it or not, he must have realized that whoever died in that battlefield was killed. Whoever was killed in that battlefield was killed by Shiva. Probably this he must have inferred, but explicitly it is not mentioned, to the best of my knowledge. So the point here is, it is a question of real, what appears to be real, what appears to be real, and what indeed is real. But there is another interesting angle to this, and that angle is this: that Arjuna only had a kind of experience that there was somebody walking ahead of his arrows. That is all that he knew. He didn't understand it. He only experienced it, saw it, visualized it, didn't understand it. That is why he asked Vyasa, who was he? So knowing who he was amounted to Arjuna's understanding the truth. Compare this with some happening in Vyasa Mahabharata. Krishna showed, when Krishna had gone to the Kaurava court on behalf of Yudhishthira to ask for 5 villages so that the war between brothers could be averted. On that occasion, when Duryodhana tried to humiliate Krishna, then Krishna showed his avatars. So he became a fish, then he became a tortoise, then he became a boar, then he became a Vamana. So he showed these avatars: fish, tortoise, boar, Vamana. He showed these avatars. But that made no difference to the Kauravas. They laughed. They said, look at this magician, this cheap magician, this coward boy, the son of a coward, this coward boy. Look at this cheap magician, what he is doing. He is changing his form to fish, now to tortoise, now to a Vamana, a dwarf. So they laughed at him. When they saw him a dwarf, when he saw him transform into a dwarf, they laughed at him. And then Krishna showed them his Nrsimha avatar, half lion and half man, that avatar. And they all ran away in fear. And Duryodhana later told his wife that, look, Krishna's conduct was very undignified. Like like actors on a stage, he kept on changing his appearance, like the actors on the stage change their dress. So he kept on changing his appearance. Now he became a fish, now this, now that. This is a very undignified behavior on the part of Krishna. But the rishis who were present, they said, they were wondering that, O Kauravas, what punya did you do in your previous life that you saw the avatars of Vishnu? He blessed you with these avatars. He blessed you with that sight. He blessed you with that sight of his, he showed you his avataric forms, and that was a blessing. What must you have done? What kind of punya did you do in your previous lives so that you got this, so that you had this vision, so that you had this darshan of the avatars? Now look at this. The rishis understood what it was when Krishna transformed himself to a fish or to a dwarf. The rishis understood what it was, that those who were present were actually witnessing the different avatars of Vishnu, Narayana, and what a blessing. But the Kauravas, they saw the same thing. What the rishis saw, they also saw. But they thought, their interpretation was that what Krishna was doing, a mean act, he was acting really like an actor on a stage, changing dress changing dress in different scenes. And Krishna was wondering, and that is interesting, Krishna was wondering that don't these Kauravas know things? If they knew, they would be able to connect. If they did not know, they would not be able to connect. So, the point is that experience or felt experience or raw experience is not sufficient if one wants to extract, or if one wants to know, then one doesn't really know with raw experience or sense experience. Experience has to be, knowledge has to be used to make sense of experience. Without knowledge, without the intervention of knowledge, experience doesn't give any knowledge. So that was the idea. The same thing here. Arjuna knew that somebody was going ahead of his arrow, but what was it? What did it mean? In other words, what's the truth? What's knowledge? And what is this knowledge? The knowledge of the truth. Similarly here, Krishna was transforming himself into different forms. That is experience, raw experience. But what did it mean? One interpretation is that it is a very low kind of act, like an actor's act in different scenes. That's not dignified. That was not a dignified act according to Duryodhana. But for the rishis, this was a great experience. This was a divine. What was happening was something extremely divine, something that was extremely blissful. What did you Kauravas do so that you had this darshan of the different avatars of Vishnu? So there was an intervention of knowledge. When there was an intervention of knowledge, then the same experience meant one thing to somebody, and without that knowledge, the same experience meant another thing to somebody. And of course, Duryodhana interpreted it in terms of his experience of what happens on the stage. So that is also knowledge, but that's a different kind of knowledge from the kind of knowledge that the rishis had. So raw experience, from raw experience you don't acquire knowledge. You acquire knowledge when the raw experience is interpreted through knowledge. So this knowledge, if this knowledge is of a higher level, then you see what the rishis saw. If it is of a lower level, you see what Duryodhana saw. So this is an important point, very important point that both Vyasa and Sarala have dealt with, namely the relation between, namely how does one acquire knowledge. Okay. You acquire knowledge. You acquire knowledge not directly from experience, raw experience. Okay. For that, you have for that there has to be an intervention of knowledge so that you acquire true knowledge. So that is the thing. Now we come to another story in Sarla Mahabharata. This is about again the same thing. What is reality? What is what appears to be the reality? But it is there in some other Mahabharatas. To the best of my knowledge, it is there in Gujarati Mahabharata, and of course it is there in Sarla Mahabharata. In some versions, this Belal Sen, the name of the person, the name of the character is Belal Sen. In some versions, wherever this Belal Sen episode occurs, he is called Barbaric, not Belal Sen. But the story is the same, the insights are the same. So Barbaric could be another name of Belal Sen in other versions of Mahabharata, wherever this story occurs. It's an interesting story. Barbaric was Bhima's grandson, but in Sarla Mahabharata, Barbaric was Bhima's son. So let's take note of that difference. So now we talk about, since we are talking about Sarla Mahabharata, we will talk about the way Sarla has looked at Barbaric. Sarla had looked at Belal Sen, and Belal Sen is Bhima's son. So when Krishna, to cut a long story short, because we are not telling the entire story of Belal Sen now. To cut a long story short, when Belal Sen saw Krishna, or when Krishna saw Belal Sen, I mean that is better. When Krishna saw Belal Sen, what he was doing was he was sort of rubbing his arrow against the stone, so that he was when Krishna saw Belal Sen, he was sharpening an arrow. So Krishna asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I am sharpening an arrow. I am sharpening my arrow." Krishna said, "All right. So what? All right. So Belal Sen said that, look, I can finish this war in 1 second. Krishna said, a great war is going to take place. It will take a long time. Maybe it will take 18 days for the war to be finished. And Belal Sen said, why 18 days? And I'll finish the war in a second almost. I'll finish it. So why should it go on for long? Then Krishna said, yeah, do you think you are so great that you'll be able to end the war in a muhurta kind of thing, in a very short time, in a moment? He said, yes. He said, can you demonstrate this? He said, yes. So Krishna, so the story goes like this. So there was a little vermilion that Krishna put on the tip of the arrow and said that if you can kill, if you really think that you can kill everybody with that, at one go, then here is a tree, and it has, here is a tree full of leaves, right? And if you can do that, then each leaf of the tree will carry the vermilion mark. There are alternative stories. Alternative stories are, so this is one. The alternative stories are, if you really can do that, then there would be a mark on everyone's forehead. Whoever you can kill, there will be a mark, vermilion mark on the foreheads of those people. So if you can do that. So anyway, I mean, these are alternative stories, they differ at the level of detail, so we don't have to really worry about it. And let's look at the story of the leaves. So Belal Sen said, yes, I will do that. So he shot the arrow, and Krishna found that on every leaf there was a vermilion mark. But there is one leaf, but there was one leaf that was missing. So Krishna said, but there is a leaf that is missing. So Belal Sen said, no, you are standing on that leaf. So take your foot off that leaf and see what. So Krishna had deliberately put his foot on a particular leaf, on a leaf, and Krishna saw there was a vermilion mark on that leaf as well. So Krishna knew that, okay, here is a person who would really be able to finish the war in the twinkle of an eye. So Krishna told him that, look, I will ask you for something, will you give me? Then Balalsan said, yes, of course, I mean, if you ask me something, I will be very happy to give you. So Krishna said, give me your head. So Balalsan said, fine, I will give you my head. I'm kneeling down before you. You cut my head with Sudarshan Chakra. So that is what he did. But before that, Balalsan said, I wanted to see the war. So Krishna said, you will see the war. Your head will remain alive, and I will put the head on the topmost, on a topmost pillar in the center of the war field, so that you can see what was happening in the war. So he put, so he put the head on a pillar which was at a vantage point, and from which he could see what was happening in the war. So here was the head of a living dead. The body was dead, the head was alive. The powers of perception were alive, and that was Krishna's grace. And he surely had given him that special power with which to see. He did not give him Dibya Drishti like he did not give him Dibya Drishti like he had given to Arjuna. The very fact that he said that you would be able to see what was happening in the war, I will put your head on the right place. So that itself was like giving him the power to see. Otherwise, how can a dead head remain alive and have the power to see? So we will return to this story maybe later. We will return to this story, but let me say this much here right now, and that is this. See, the war is over. We'll return to the story. So let me only tell you the essence of it right now. So the war was over, and Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, Kunti, Kunti, Draupadi, Subhadra. They all sat together, and Bhima said that if they won the war, it was because of him. Yudhishthira said no, the war was won because of him. So each one of them claimed victory for themselves. Each one of them claimed that they were victorious for his contribution. Not to be undone, Kunti also joined them. Kunti said that the war was won not because of what each of them, what her sons had done, but what she had done. What she had done and what Yudhishthira has done to make this kind of a claim, we will come to later in a subsequent lecture. And Bhima, of course, we know what he must have said, that he was the one who killed all the 100 Kaurava brothers. So in any case, so Draupadi also claimed credit. He said, no, all of you are wrong. It is because of me that the war was won. And Subhadra, in Sara Mahabharata, Subhadra is a very quiet person. Even Subhadra, Krishna's sister, who Arjuna had married, who married Arjuna. Now, even she claimed credit. So Krishna said, Krishna knew that this is not a very good thing, that all of them were fighting among themselves and trying to take credit. So Krishna said, okay, no problem. I mean, there is one person there is somebody who has seen what was happening. So let us go and ask that person what was happening, because that person will tell us, because we need a witness. You see, something happened, and there are many people who saw what had happened from their own point of view. From Bhima's point of view, the victory was achieved because of him. And the same is the case of others. So each saw what had happened from his own point of view. So, but then we need a point of view which was not subjective. So who would give this? From where do you get this? You go to Belal Sen, the severe head. So everybody said, fine, we'll go there and find out from Belal Sen what had happened. And Bhima was the father. So Bhima all along thought that since they were going to ask his son what had happened and to who the credit must go for the victory, he was sure that his son would support him. So they went, and Krishna said that, look, the Pandavas are, each one of the Pandavas is claiming credit, and so are the women also. So you have seen the war, and you tell us what happened, who killed who, and to who the credit of victory for the war must go. Belal Sen said, I do not know why the Pandavas are fighting among themselves on this issue. I did not see anyone killing anyone. All I saw was a chakra with the energy and power and light of 1,000 suns, blazing chakra with the power of 1,000 suns, light of 1,000 suns, was moving from one side to another side, killing some from this side, killing some from the other side, returning to this side, killing people on this side, and then going to the other side, killing soldiers and warriors on that side. So it was a kind of chakra which moved to and fro in the battlefield, and it is the chakra that was killing. And this was a great, this was the kind of chakra which was majestic in its glory, splendor, radiance, and in brilliance. Thousands of suns could not match it. So that was what was killing. So why are Pandavas fighting who killed, who did not kill? I didn't see anybody killing anybody. It is the chakra which was doing it. So Bhima was very upset about it. He thought that his son would support him, and when this is what he heard, he lost his cool and slapped the severe head. The head fell, and as the head fell, there was a light that emanated from the head and was absorbed in Krishna. So that was moksha. That was moksha. So when Belal Sen sat before Krishna, in front of Krishna, and said that sever my head with your chakra, so he knew what he was doing. He knew that if Krishna severs his head with his chakra, that would be a blessing, because that is how he would get moksha. This is what he did. This is what he got. And the important point here is that what he saw was this: what was real, what was not real, what was the truth, what was not the truth but appeared to be the truth. So, as there is this Mahadev episode in Vyasa Mahabharata, and as there is this vision of the dead, and the vision of the Kaurava luminaries, the Kaurava warriors entering into the blazing, entering into the mouth of Krishna in the Vishwarava Darshan yoga of in Vishwarava Darshan chapter in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, in Vyasa Mahabharata, the Belal Sen episode is there, the story of Belal Sen is there, and the story of Belal Sen signifies the same thing, that what you see may not be the truth, perhaps is not the truth. To be able to see the truth, you need something, you need a special power to see. See, with our powers of with our sense powers, the powers of the senses, that is the five senses, and Indians believed in another, there is a sixth sense, and that is mind. So manas our mind is the sixth sense. So, sense perceptions do not give us the knowledge of what is the truth, what is real. So you need a special power of vision. So the special power of vision Krishna gave Arjuna in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Vyasa had given, the sage Vyasa had given the charioteer Sanjaya, who described what was happening in the battlefield to Dhritarashtra. And Belal Sen, nobody gave him that vision explicitly as Krishna had told Arjuna that, look, you cannot see my universal form, therefore I give you the power to see. Dibya Chakshu is what I am giving you. And Vyasa of course had given that Dibya Chakshu to Sanjaya. But there is nothing like Krishna did not explicitly say that he was giving Dibya Chakshu to Belal Sen, but that the severed head wanted, that the severed head wanted to see the war, and that Krishna said you can do that. That itself, the word of Krishna was good enough. That was like giving him Dibya Chakshu. So that is what he saw. Now what is important is, now in case of Arjuna and Mahadev episode that we just talked about some time back, Arjuna saw his enemies. Arjuna saw that his enemies were killed that way. Although he must have inferred that if his enemies were killed like that, so surely everyone who was killed like that. Mahadev was the one who killed. But that was an inference. What he saw and what he was told about was with respect to his enemies. So people say that I killed them, but actually it is that fiery figure who had killed them. So that is what he saw, and that is what he was explicitly told. But about the rest of the people who died, he might have inferred. There is no, he must have inferred. But in this case, in this case, explicitly, it is said that whoever was killed in the battlefield, was killed by the chakra. It killed from this side, it killed from that side. It moved from one side to the other, it returned to this side and again went back to the other side. So it accounts for all the deaths that happened, not the death of, and there is nothing left for inference. So in sum, we have been trying to sort of see how the same theme, the same issue, be it an issue of knowledge, be it a moral issue or an ethical issue or an issue of dharma, the same issues have been raised, and two different poets in two different times against two different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and individual geniuses. Each person has his own individual genius. So in terms of these, they were telling their own stories. So we have been constantly talking about these two stories at the same time, virtually in a comparative perspective. But the point about comparison, this is what I have repeatedly said, is not to say that one story is superior to the other or nothing of this kind. It is just that comparison enriches our understanding, enriches our perspective. So single perspective, multiple perspectives always add to our understanding of things. So a single perspective is limited, a single vision is limited. So there are multiple stories, multiple perspectives, multiple visions, multiple understandings of the basic things, maybe about life, maybe about death, maybe about the ultimate reality. So it is the multiplicity which really gives us a better understanding of things, in addition to giving us intellectual delight. Thank you very much.